In the fertile land of Goshen, along the Nile's life-giving banks, the descendants of Jacob, known as the Israelites, had multiplied into a great people. Centuries earlier, their ancestor Joseph, a Hebrew who rose to Egypt's second in command, had saved the nation from famine, earning his kin a place of honor. But time erases memory. A new pharaoh, likely the powerful 19th dynasty, ascended the throne, ignorant or dismissive of Joseph's legacy. To him, the Israelites were a threat, a foreign nation within his borders, too numerous to control. His solution was ruthless: enslave them. Men, women, and children toiled under lash, hauling stone and mixing mortar for the store cities of Pithom and Ramesses, their sweat mingling with Egypt's dust. Yet their numbers grew, fueling Pharaoh's paranoia. To crush their spirit, Pharaoh issued a chilling decree. Every newborn Hebrew boy must be thrown into the Nile, devoured by crocodiles or drowned in the river's currents. The Nile, Egypt's lifeblood, became a symbol of death for the Israelites. In this shadow of genocide, a Levite couple, Amram and Jochebed, bore a son, a child of striking beauty, as if marked by destiny. For 3 months, Jochebed hid him, muffling his cries, her heart torn between love and dread. When secrecy became impossible, she devised a desperate plan. She wove a basket of papyrus, sealed it with pitch to make it watertight, and placed her infant son inside. With a prayer, she set the basket among the Nile's reeds, entrusting him to God's care. Her daughter, Miriam, perhaps 10 years old, lingered nearby, watching with bated breath. Providence intervened. Pharaoh's daughter, possibly a princess of the royal harem, came to bathe in the Nile, attended by her maids. Spotting the basket, she sent a servant to retrieve it. When she opened it, the baby's cries pierced her heart. "This is one of the Hebrew children," she said, yet pity overruled politics. Miriam, seizing the moment, stepped forward with feigned innocence. "Shall I find a Hebrew woman to nurse the child for you?" The princess agreed, and Miriam fetched Jochebed. In a divine irony, Jochebed was paid to nurse her own son, raising him in his early years with Hebrew songs and stories of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The princess named the boy Moses, meaning drawn out, for she had pulled him from the water. Moses grew up in 2 worlds: the opulent courts of Pharaoh, where he learned Egyptian writing, mathematics, and military tactics, and the hidden whispers of his Hebrew heritage. Seated by his mother's early care, as a young man, perhaps in his 20s, he could no longer ignore the chasm between his privilege and his people's pain. One day, walking among the work gangs, he saw an Egyptian taskmaster savagely beating a Hebrew slave. Rage surged within him. Glancing around to ensure no witnesses, Moses struck the Egyptian, killing him, and buried the body in the sand. But the act was seen. The next day, when Moses tried to mediate a quarrel between 2 Hebrews, one sneered, "Will you kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" Word had spread, and Pharaoh's wrath followed. Moses, now a fugitive, fled across the Sinai wilderness to Midian, a land of nomadic tribes and desert springs. In Midian, Moses found refuge. At a well, he defended the daughters of Jethro, also called Ruh, a Midianite priest, from shepherds harassing them. Grateful, Jethro welcomed Moses into his household, giving him his daughter Zipporah in marriage. Moses, once a prince, became a shepherd, tending Jethro's flocks in the shadow of Mount Horeb. He and Zipporah had a son, Gershom, meaning sojourner, for Moses felt like a stranger in a foreign land. Decades passed, and the fire of his youth seemed to fade into the rhythm of desert life. But God had not forgotten the Israelites. Their cries under Egypt's yoke reached heaven, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham to make his descendants a great nation in a promised land. On a seemingly ordinary day, as Moses led his flocks near Horeb, later called Sinai, he saw an extraordinary sight: a bush engulfed in flames yet unburned. Curiosity drew him closer, and a voice thundered, "Moses, Moses." Trembling, Moses removed his sandals at God's command, for the ground was holy. The voice revealed himself as, "I am who I am, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." He declared his mission: to free Israel from Egypt and lead them to Canaan, a land flowing with milk and honey. Moses, now about 80, protested his unworthiness, citing his lack of eloquence and authority. God reassured him, granting signs: a staff that became a snake, a hand that turned leprous and healed, and the promise of his presence. Aaron, Moses' older brother, would speak for him. Reluctantly, Moses obeyed, returned to Egypt with Zipporah and his sons. In Goshen, Moses and Aaron rallied the Israelite elders, sharing God's promise. The people believed, bowing in worship. But Pharaoh was another matter. In the royal palace, likely at Thebes or Memphis, Moses and Aaron confronted the ruler. "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, let my people go, that they may hold a feast to me in the wilderness." Pharaoh, deified in Egyptian culture, scoffed, "Who is the Lord, that I should obey him?" Instead of freeing the Israelites, he tightened their chains, ordering them to produce the same quota of bricks without straw. The people's labor became unbearable, and they turned on Moses, blaming him for their misery. Moses, disheartened, cried to God, who promised, "Now you shall see what I will do to Pharaoh." Before the 10th plague, God instituted the Passover. Each Israelite household slaughtered a lamb, painting its blood on their doorposts. They ate the lamb with unleavened bread and bitter herbs, ready to flee. That night, as death struck Egypt, the angel of the Lord passed over homes marked by blood, sparing Israel's firstborn. The Passover became a lasting memorial of God's deliverance. Egypt wailed. Pharaoh, grieving his own son, summoned Moses and Aaron in the dead of night. "Go, leave my people, you and the Israelites." The Egyptians, fearing more judgment, urged them to leave, showering them with gold, silver, and clothing, fulfilling God's promise that Israel would not leave empty-handed. About 600,000 men, plus women, children, and a mixed multitude of others, perhaps 2 million total, departed Goshen. They carried unleavened dough, Joseph's bones, honoring his dying wish, and the spoils of Egypt. After 430 years of sojourn and slavery, Israel was free. God guided them with a pillar of cloud by day and fire by night, a visible sign of his presence. The Israelites headed toward the Red Sea, likely the Gulf of Suez or a nearby lake, taking a route through the wilderness to avoid Philistine territory. But Pharaoh's heart hardened once more. Regretting his loss of slave labor, he mobilized his army, 600 chariots, horsemen, and troops, and pursued Israel. At Pi-hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea, the Israelites found themselves trapped. Mountains on one side, the sea ahead, and Pharaoh's forces closing in. Panic erupted. The people cried to Moses, "Have you brought us out here to die? It would have been better to serve in Egypt." Moses, trusting God, declared, "Fear not, stand firm, and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will work for you today." At God's command, Moses raised the staff over the sea. A strong east wind blew all night, parting the waters and drying the seabed, creating a path flanked by walls of water. The Israelites, hearts racing, crossed on dry ground, the pillar of fire holding back the Egyptians. Dawn broke as Pharaoh's army pursued, chariots thundering into the sea's corridor. But God intervened. The Egyptians' chariot wheels jammed and panic seized them. Moses stretched out his hand again, and the waters crashed back, swallowing the army, horses, riders, and all. Not one survived. On the far shore, the Israelites stood in awe. Miriam, now a prophetess, led the women in a dance, tambourines ringing as they sang with Moses, "Sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and his rider he has thrown into the sea." The Song of Moses, one of the Bible's oldest poems, celebrated God's power and deliverance. The departure was not the end, but a beginning. Moses led the people into the wilderness of Shur, where they faced new challenges. At Marah, they found bitter water, but God showed Moses a tree to sweeten it, teaching trust in his provision. At Elim, they rested by 12 springs and 70 palm trees. The journey continued to Mount Sinai, where God would give Moses the 10 Commandments and forge Israel into a covenant nation, bound to him as a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. The story of Moses in the Exodus is a timeless epic of liberation, faith, and divine power. Moses, a flawed hero, doubting, impulsive, yet obedient, embodies the struggle to answer a higher calling. The plagues and Red Sea crossings showcase God's sovereignty, challenging human pride and offering hope to the oppressed. The Passover and the seas parting are pivotal, symbolizing salvation and new beginnings in Jewish and Christian traditions. Historically, the story may align with Egypt's New Kingdom, c. 13th to 15th century BC, with debates over Pharaoh's identity, possibly Ramses II or Merneptah, adding intrigue. Its cultural impact is vast, inspiring art, literature, and movements like the African American spirituals and modern Passover Seders.
Thanks for watching. Share God's love and subscribe for daily Bible inspiration. God bless you.